Welcome to my Week 4 Top Games of the Week video. We're going to run through the top 10 games of the week, plus some other additional matchups that you should definitely keep your eye on. Before that, we're just going to talk about a little bit about what happened last week. So last week, not a great week for me, at least on the win-loss record. I took some guesses. I took some chances. Sorry, that's what I meant to say. I took some chances. I put myself on the line there. I really went up against ESPN, and it just didn't end up working out. I went 5 of 10 last week on the win-loss. Was really close to being 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10, honestly. The Auburn game, I predicted a win in that one for Auburn. It was a lot closer than a lot of people were expecting, and the refs kind of gave that one away, really. That game could have gone very, very much differently than it did. I was betting Indiana, and they really looked like the better team against Cincinnati, and then you just kind of started shooting themselves in the foot there. And then I was calling a win by Virginia Tech. West Virginia ended up pulling that one off by a few points. So, like I said, I was much closer to about 8 out of 10, which is what I've been the last few weeks, and just ended up coming up a little bit short. So overall in the season so far, my win-loss record, I am 18 out of 30 through the first 3 weeks on the top 10 games that I've picked each week. ESPN beat me out this week, and they finally took the lead. I've had them on the ropes the first 2 weeks. They finally took the lead by 1 point. They are 19 out of 30, where I'm really, I would say making my money, but I'm not actually betting. I just make the videos. Maybe I should. Is the over/under. So far in the season, I am 23 out of 30 on the over/under, and I was 7 out of 10 this week. So let's move into it real quick. I don't want this video to go on for too long. I know I started losing attention span after a while, even from some of the old timers. So let's get into this right off the bat. So others that you should definitely keep an eye on that just didn't make the cut for top 10 games of the week this week are Air Force versus FAU, an under-the-radar game that I think is going to be much more interesting than a lot of people are thinking. Air Force, a good team out of Mountain West. FAU, also a good team in the group of 5 there. Air Force in a shootout last week against Utah State put up over 600 yards through both the air and the ground. Of course, ground primarily counted for most of them, but Air Force and FAU, I think Air Force gets the win in this one. It should be an exciting one to watch. Texas versus Texas Tech. I wouldn't call it a rivalry because it just hasn't been that competitive, but it is an interstate rivalry there between the two Texas teams. Of course, it won't be being played very much in the future because Texas moved to SEC, so this might be the last one in a long time. See if Texas Tech can pull off an upset. Missouri versus Boston College. Missouri trying to have a okay start of the season here at 2-1, but Boston College really off to a hot start. One of only 2 undefeated ACC teams right now in their conference. Them and Wake Forest, only 2 3-0 teams so far. So interesting to see what happens in this one. Boston College looking like a better team than they usually are anyway. And then LSU versus Mississippi State. LSU, a team that is off to another rough start, like I predicted they would be. Kind of another mediocre middle tier year for them. And Mississippi State, a team that is trying to recover from a tough loss to Memphis. So we'll have to see how that goes. Those are my others on the outside, and we're going to jump right into it in the top 10. So number 10 and through number 1, I'm going to give you the over/under. I'm going to give you I'll give you what Vegas is predicting on these, what ESPN is predicting, where to watch these games, when the games are, top players for each matchup, and then I'll give you my prediction for each game, plus my pick on the over/under. So let's get right into it. So 3-0 Rutgers versus 3-0 Michigan. A game that usually probably wouldn't even be on the radar for anybody. But the fact that Rutgers is 3-0 coming to this one, and they played well in their first game against Temple, a big win in that one. I believe it was 61-14. Yeah, 61-14 against Temple's. They're not like the best school out of the group of 5, but they're a pretty good school out of the American Athletic Conference. And the fact that they got crushed that bad by Rutgers shows. I'm not saying Rutgers is going to go win the Big Ten. I'm not saying that they'll even necessarily get bowl eligible. But they are a team that's off to a much better start than they normally would. And Michigan, Harbaugh has just been so inconsistent over the years. He's on the hot seat for sure, and he really needs to get a big win in this one. Vegas is predicting that big win at 20 points. ESPN giving them an 87.5% chance of winning it. He needs to go out there and get that big one, but he might be overlooking Rutgers here a little bit. And Michigan, a team that has struggled through the first bit of the season here, and did end up only, not playing that great their first game against Western Michigan. So best player, or not best player necessarily, but key player to keep your eye on for this matchup is going to be Michigan running back Blake Coram, 407 yards rushing, 7.7 average. I do think that Michigan's able to take the win in this one, but I think it's going to be I think it's going to be under on the over-under. I think that it will be less than a 20-point advantage here for Michigan. All right, so second game here, and this is where it gets interesting for me at least. Boise State versus Utah State, the big matchup. I just finished making my 3 keys to the game video. I'll put that link in the description if you want to go and watch it. 1-2 Boise State going up against 3-0 Utah State. Two teams having very different starts to their season. Utah State, of course, winning big, or not winning big, but getting a big win for their program against Washington State to start the year, and then a big win against Air Force. Yeah, that was a nail-biter to the end, but they ended up being able to pull it off. I believe the final score was like 48-45 or 49-45. It's a crazy win there. So Utah State 3-0, Boise State 1-2, trying to revamp their season here coming into conference play. Boise State is favored in this one by 9 points, and they're given a 66.6% chance of winning. You heard me right on that one. 66.6% chance of winning. It's really going to be Bachmar versus Bonner. If Bonner can play. Like I said in my other video, I'm not sure that he's back for this matchup because he was injured at the end of that last game. But if he is back, it's going to be the B versus B, the B and Bs. Bachmar versus Bonner in this one. Two good quarterbacks in the Mountain West. Bachmar having a little bit of a tricky start to the season, some inconsistency and some overthrow issues, but Bonner having a really, really good start. Bachmar, 845 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. To Bonner, 786 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions, and that number would have been higher if he hadn't been injured towards the end of the Air Force matchup. So I'm going to take Boise State in this one. I'm going to agree on the so-called experts over at ESPN. ESPN. So I am going to agree with so-called experts. Man, I'm messing up all my words here towards the end. Sorry, it's late, and this is the second video I've done today. Sorry. So let's try this one a third time. Third time's the charm. Boise State, I'm picking them in this one, agreeing with the so-called experts over at ESPN. I'm going to call over on the over-under. I think it will be greater than a 9-point victory. All right, let's gotta change hats here for the next one, and it is the Liberty Flames versus Syracuse at number 8 in my top 10 games of the week. 3-0 Liberty. They're 3-0, but they have had a little bit of a rocky start, what you could say, not necessarily being as explosive as they should be, but they have a great quarterback in Malik Willis, who is definitely a Heisman candidate, or at least a dark horse for the Heisman. Tough for Group of 5 quarterbacks to win that Heisman, but he has played great to start the season, and he played really well last week, and I think you'll see a big improvement this week. 3-0 Liberty going up against 2-1 Syracuse. That game is going to be, you know what, I do this all the time. I forget to give the TV information. Let me just backtrack real quick. The Rutgers, the Boise State versus Utah State game is noon on CBS. I didn't write down the Rutgers versus Michigan game. You'll have to look up where that is yourself. I apologize. And Liberty versus Syracuse is Friday at 8 p.m. on ACC Network. The first game that Liberty has managed to actually get onto a major ESPN network. So you definitely want to go in and watch that. Malik Willis, like I was saying, great quarterback for the Flames. 613 yards passing, 7 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and he has another 225 yards rushing and 4 touchdowns on the ground. And we haven't really even seen what he's completely capable or fully capable of. First game of the season for the Flames, they were kind of playing FCS opponent, trying to keep their playbook on a minimum, keep Willis from getting hurt. Second game of the season, they were working on some scheme things it looked like, trying to restrict his running. We really saw him take off big in that game against Old Dominion, and I think he's going to come to carry that momentum, playing 100% full playmaker that he is in this game against Syracuse. Liberty is favored by 6 with a 53.2% chance of winning. I think they definitely go in and upset Syracuse again. Syracuse, of course, losing to the Flames last season in 2020. Liberty, the Syracuse is going to be ready for him, but Liberty, I think, is going to go in there. Their offense is just too explosive for the Syracuse defense, and I believe that Liberty will be able to come in there with a big win. I'm going over on the under-over for Liberty versus Syracuse. All right. So, number 7, 2-1 Marshall going up against 2-1 Appalachian State on Thursday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. There, see, I got it all out of the way up front so I don't forget it. All right, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. App State favored this one by 7. And they are given a 81.3% chance of winning this one. So, you know, typically you probably wouldn't think of this as necessarily a great or top 10 type of contest. But Appleton State versus Marshall are definitely representing the two top teams in their conference right now, and they're, Coastal, of course, is the top team in that conference, but Appalachian State is right there in the mix, and the conference play hasn't even started. So traditionally, two top teams in their conference, and this is going to be, what you're seeing right here is a matchup, not necessarily of teams, but of conferences. Conference USA is on the downslope. The Sun Belt is on the rise, and this is a huge game for determining head-to-head which conference right now is going to be the conference that's going to get that higher status up the road. And this could have huge impact with the AAC having to expand now because they're losing teams to the Big 12. They're going to be looking for the teams that are going to be able to impress. And this is going to be a big game on Thursday. There's nothing else to watch unless you're into NFL. But as college football perspective, there's nothing else to watch. This is the primetime matchup. There's going to be a lot of eyes on this program. It's going to be interesting to see what these two teams can do. So the key player for this one is going to be Grant Wells, the quarterback for Marshall's, thrown over 1,100 yards passing already this season. App State, like I said, is favored. I am going to take App State in this one, but I do think that it will be closer than a 7-point win. I think it'll come down to a field goal or 4 points or something like that. So I'm calling under on the over-under for Marshall versus Appalachian State. Okay, number 6 here, then we'll be into the top 5. 3-0 Texas A&M, ranked number 7, coming up against 3-0 number 16 Arkansas. 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time on CBS. Texas A&M is favored by 5.5 points, and ESPN gives them a 57.4% chance of victory. Now, you might wonder, why is this at number 6? There's not necessarily there's only, in my rankings here as far as top games, there's only one other top 25 versus top 25 matchup in the next 5 games. And Texas A&M versus Arkansas, that's number 7 versus number 16 SEC teams. You'd think it would be ranked higher than it is. Well, the main reason here is that Arkansas is incredibly overrated. They should not be sitting at number 16. They've really not played anybody besides Texas, and beating Texas was a fluke using rivalry powers and Texas really overlooking Arkansas. This is not going to be a close game. Texas is favored by 5.5 points, but it's going to be a lot. Texas A&M should win this one. I said Texas, but it's Texas A&M. It's favored by 5.5 points. They should win this one by a lot more than that. Arkansas is going to prove that they don't belong in the top 25, that the game against Texas was a fluke. They might have got the first team out of Texas, but they're not going to beat the second one. Texas A&M will be prepared for them, and they really want to prove that they are a playoff contender here. So I think this is going to be kind of a blowout, but you've got to put it in the top 25. Because it's number 7 versus number 16. I just don't think it's going to be as interesting a game as the experts are predicting. Top player for this matchup, running back Isaiah Spillers. He hasn't necessarily had a huge season so far as yards. I think he's at 400 yards, which is good. It's good for a running back. But he's averaged, the big numbers for him, the big number, the eye-popping number, is that he's averaging 10 yards per carry. 10 yards per carry. That is insane. I didn't write down his total stats. I said 400, but it might be 200 something. I'm not entirely sure. Don't quote me on that one. But the one you can quote me, because I did write that down, is 10 yards per carry. He leads Texas A&M in rushing so far. He is having a great season. 10 yards per carry is just an amazing stat, and I think he's going to get a lot more yards per carry or a lot more yards against Arkansas in this matchup. All right, number 5, 3-0 Baylor versus 2-1 Iowa State, 3:30 p.m. on Fox. Now, Iowa State, this is a big game for them because they are 2-1, but their one loss is to then number 10, now number 5, Iowa. Iowa State is still hanging around the playoff conversation. They don't control their own destiny. They would need a lot of things to happen. The best chance for a playoff team right now from the Big 12 is definitely Oklahoma, but Iowa State is still in that mix, and they need a big win here against 3-0 Baylor, a team that they could lose to. Iowa State is favored in this one, 7 points, 54.7% chance of winning, but only 54.7% chance of winning according to ESPN. Iowa State has not looked good so far to start their year, struggled against FCS opponent out the gate, lost to Iowa. So this is a team that is definitely struggling. Brock Purdy has really got to step up and show that this is a playoff contender. 625 yards so far for 3 out of 3. 625 yards passing so far. But he's thrown 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. So he's really not having the level of play that should be expected out of him right now. Really not playing up to those expectations. And really not necessarily Iowa State as a whole, not showing that they're a playoff contender, but they're still on the fringe. They're Still in the conversation. Things could happen down the road, but it starts with a win against Baylor here. I do think they managed to pull it off. I do think they managed to get their season back on track. I'm going to call over, win by Iowa State, and over on the under-over. Number 4, 3-0, number 25, Kansas State at 3-0, Oklahoma State, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN+. I don't know how a game... I think this is a great game. I think that this is an under-the-radar game, a really good matchup against 2 undefeated teams in the Big 12. I don't know how it got pushed to ESPN+, but this is definitely a game that it's a huge steal by ESPN+, but it's a game that should be on a major network. Oklahoma State favored in this one by 6 points, 56.3% chance of winning. This is a big game for both programs because they're undefeated. They're not necessarily playoff contenders, but they're undefeated, and that's big. The second thing is that the Big 12, if they want a chance of getting in, the way that they've played so far, the Big 12 overall has been terrible. Even the teams that have not won very well, or have not run the big games or big wins like they should. I mean, Oklahoma barely beat Nebraska. They barely beat Tulane. This has not been a good start to the season for them. The Big 12 really needs some other teams in the conference to step up and prove to be quality programs so that the real playoff contenders can go out and beat those teams and use them as stepping blocks to the playoff. And it starts with a game like this against Kansas State versus Oklahoma State. The big player, key player for this matchup is going to be Oklahoma State running back Warren, who he barely had any rushing yards prior to this matchup, but against Boise State he had 218 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns versus Boise State. Now that could be and I think it probably is partially a reflection on Boise State's defense, especially their defensive line play. But Warren also shows some real skills, and he's going to be a real challenge in this matchup. But when you look at, so both these teams actually are coming off of wins against Mountain West teams. Oklahoma State beat Boise State by 1 point, and they needed the refs to win that game. If it hadn't been for the referees, Boise State would have won that game. I made a video talking about it. I'm not going to go into depth on. I'm not going to talk about it now. But I made a video, 3 reasons for defeat, and you can go watch that. I'll put it in the link description. But Kansas State is coming off a big win against Mountain West team, so barely winning by 1 point against Boise State, and a big win by Kansas State against formerly undefeated Nevada, who looks like a very good program. I believe they beat them 17-31. So a very, big win by Kansas State versus barely winning by Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State still looking like they're struggling, especially in the quarterback department. Sanders does not look like a very good quarterback for Oklahoma State here. And so I'm thinking in this one, the experts are saying Oklahoma State, but I'm saying on this, I think Kansas State is going to be able to pull off the win, and I do think that it will be more than that 6 points that's being projected. I'm calling over, and I'm calling Kansas State with the win in this matchup. But this is a big matchup for the Big 12 to see two teams that they really need to, after this head-to-head, to go the rest of the season playing really well against the rest of the conference so that Oklahoma can beat both of them and have a chance of going to the playoffs. Or maybe the tables will flip. We've seen it before where these two teams that have started out outside the rankings and are slowly creeping their way towards them go undefeated and become playoff teams. They're undefeated. Who knows? Either way, it's an exciting matchup. It's a good matchup. 2 3-0 Big 12 teams in a big showdown. I think that'll be an exciting one to watch. Number 3. All right, we're into the top 3 now. 2-1, number 9 Clemson at 2-1 North Carolina State. Zach, you're going to love this one. 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. NC State has come so close to knocking off Clemson in the past. In 2016 and 2017, they almost had them. Last couple of years, not so much. But when you got Trevor Lawrence, what are you going to do? So Clemson has come so close to getting knocked off by NC State. NC State has a great running back in, I'm not going to attempt his first name because I would mess it up, but Z Knight, 298 yards rushing, 5.8 yards per carry. And Clemson is coming off of a game where they only won by 6 points against Georgia Tech, 14-18 against Georgia Tech, the worst team in the ACC, the Vanderbilt of the ACC, and they barely beat them by 6 points. Even if any team in the ACC, Clemson, if they're the Clemson of past years, which they're not this year, if they're Clemson that is playoff bound, a playoff credible team, they need to be beating all the teams in their conference by a lot more than that, but especially Georgia Tech. So the fact that they barely beat Georgia Tech like that, the fact that DJ is really, really struggling to start the year, just like I said he would. Everyone's coming on this Heisman train saying the DJ is the next Trevor Lawrence. He's better than Trevor Lawrence. And my wife is a Clemson fan, and we watch all the games. I'm not a Clemson fan, but she is. We watch all the games, and I watched DJ play when Trevor Lawrence was out, and I did not like what I saw. And we are seeing that. And now a lot of it is the offensive line play. Absolutely, Clemson. There's some other issues there as well. But DJ, the game is too fast for him right now. He's not making the right calls. He's not making the right plays, and he's not playing honestly, Clemson should have gone out in the transfer portal and got a quarterback. I don't know why they put it all on DJ. I thought that was a mistake, and it's really showing up now. So I'm not calling an upset by NC State. I'm not putting Clemson on upset alert. In fact, I don't believe that I'm putting any teams on upset alert this week, besides from Oklahoma State, but that's close enough. So this is going to be one of the first week that I don't have an upset alert. But if there was going to be an upset alert, it would be this one. Clemson has one of the easiest ACC schedules that I've ever seen, and usually their schedule in the ACC are walks in the park anyway, but this is one of the easiest ACC schedules I've ever seen for Clemson. But the one team, and I said it preseason, I said the one team that might have a shot, that might have a chance of coming in, and not coming in because Clemson's going to them, might have a shot of taking out the big dog here in the Clemson Tigers was NC State. I do think that this game is going to be a lot closer than experts are predicting. That's a 10-point spread by Vegas and a 68.3% chance of winning for Clemson by ESPN. So I think this game is going to be much closer. I'm calling under on the over-under. I do think that Clemson sneaks a win out of this one, but man, is it going to be close. I think that NC State has a real shot. NC State fans, you got to hold on to your hats, bring lots of snacks and buckle down for this one because it is going to be close. I think that NC State has a really good shot of knocking off Clemson, and I would love to be wrong in this one and to see Clemson go down to NC State. I've watched since Ryan Finley transferred over there. I've kept an eye on the NC State program. I wouldn't call myself a fan necessarily, but I love seeing upsets, and I've been watching NC State for a while. So, all right, that's number 3. Number 2, and I know I'm at 20 minutes, so we're going to finish off this real quick. Number 2, 2-1 UCLA at 2-1 Stanford. This is a historic matchup. This is a big rivalry here in the state of California. 6 p.m. Eastern Time on the Pac-12 network. UCLA so far owns the series, but it's close, 46-43. Stanford actually won the last time in 2020. This is a series that goes back to 1925. Interestingly enough, if you want to know, Stanford won that game 0-82. Which is crazy. We don't see scores like that anymore. But 1925 was the first time that this series was played. UCLA owns the series so far, 46-43, barely ahead in that one. And I don't think we'll see any 0-82 matchups in this time around. UCLA is favored 4.5 points and has a 54.7% chance of winning according to ESPN. I do like UCLA in this one. Their quarterback has got to get more consistent, and I think that's an understatement. Thompson Robinson for UCLA has only completed 55% of his passes. Now, he's over 600 yards, 668 yards passing on 60 attempts, but he's only completed 33% of them. So he is really having a very inconsistent year. That's hurt them. It hurt them when they lost to Fresno State, for sure. Fresno State, a good team, a team that almost beat Oregon, a team that should be ranked much higher than they are. East Coast bias again. They should be ranked much higher than they are, but they aren't. But it is a quarterback that is struggling, but Stanford, a team that got blown out by USC. I think that UCLA can come in here. Or was it? Sorry, shoot, was it the other way around? Dang it! I'm mixing up right now. Sorry, I think I just had a major misspeak. I might be one of those things where I have to go in and put it in the. Yeah, I think, man. I'm drawing a little brain blank here. Actually, I think Stanford did upset USC, didn't they? Anyhow, main point here is I think that we'll just move on from that blunder. I will correct myself in the remarks as I always do. But I think that UCLA does take the win in this one. I think Chip Kelly is going to kind of try to recover here after that loss to Fresno. A disappointing loss for his program after winning against LSU the way they did. UCLA, I think, is still a team that can have a good season, can definitely get bowl eligible, and I think Chip Kelly, he's been so close over the last few seasons in and out of so many games where they've only lost by a few points. I talked about in my Pac-12 preview how many games UCLA has been so close in. I think he's just one more. If they can give him time, I don't know if they will, but next season I think it's going to be an awesome year for UCLA, and I think they can still have a good one this year, and I think that they're going to be able to pull a win here against Stanford. I'm calling over on the under with a win by UCLA. All right, number one, big matchup of the week. Noon on Fox is a 3-0 number 12 Notre Dame, who has struggled so far this season, at 1-1 number 18 Wisconsin. This was a really hard one to pick. It really was. Wisconsin is favored by 6.5 points and 54.6% chance by ESPN, even though they're ranked further back. This was a really hard one to pick because Notre Dame has struggled. They barely beat a Florida State team that then went and lost to Jacksonville State. They barely beat Toledo. But, first game struggles out the bat, it's hard to go play at Florida State in that environment. Toledo, a good team out of the MAC, even though they ended up losing to Colorado State this week. A good team out of the MAC that I was really high on coming into this season. Jack Cohen for Notre Dame, a good quarterback. I don't think they're losing because of him. He's 828 yards passing for 8 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. And sorry, they haven't lost. My main point was not losing, struggling is what I meant to say. I don't think they're necessarily struggling because of him. And I think that Notre Dame is a team that's still going to be very competitive this year. Are they a playoff team? I don't think so, but I do think they managed to get the win against Wisconsin. It's not an upset alert because Notre Dame is ranked higher, but I am picking against the so-called experts, and I'm going to call over on the under here. I think that Notre Dame can pull off a win against Wisconsin, push themselves back into the playoff conversation, and definitely to get their season back on track here before they have to go play some tough matchups down the road. This is really the first big challenge for Notre Dame. We'll have to see if they're up to it. Notre Dame, you always want to shine on the biggest stage. We'll have to see if the Fighting Irish are able to do that here going up against the Badgers. Okay, thank you so much for watching this video. As always, if you like and subscribe, if you like these videos, please like and subscribe. I apologize for the multiple misspeaks throughout this video, and again, I will go and make a note whether it was any mistakes I made. I'll make sure to put them in the remarks. But thank you for watching this video. Make sure you let me know what your top 10 games of the week are, what you think what those matchups are going to be. Who's your best matchup of the week, and which team you think is going to win them. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for watching this video, and as always, go Big Blue.